Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're taking a look at Chapter 16 of the Dao De Jing.
Yes, a classic.
It really is. And we've got something extra special for this one, insights from a lecture by Dao Master Chu-Ming Fu.
Oh, his lectures are fantastic.
I know, right? This chapter is all about finding that inner peace and stillness, even when everything around you feels like it's going a mile a minute.
Very relevant for, well, everyone these days.
Isn't it? It's like a guide to navigating the chaos and coming out the other side feeling grounded and calm.
And maybe even happy.
Exactly. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's quickly set the stage for anyone who might be new to this.
Good idea.
The Dao De Jing, it's an ancient Chinese text, kind of like a foundational pillar for Taoism.
Attributed to Laozi.
Right, Laozi. And it's known for this poetic, almost cryptic wisdom.
Definitely uses very few words to express some seriously profound ideas.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Let's start with the text itself, the original Chinese. Really immerse ourselves.
Love that.
The first line reads, May.
Beautiful. And that translates to, the state of vacancy should be brought to the utmost degree, and that of stillness guarded with unwearying vigor.
Vacancy and stillness. Sounds simple enough.
Right.
But I have a feeling there's a bit more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. So much more.
Like, what's the deeper meaning here?
Okay, so in the Dao De Jing, vacancy, or zu in Chinese, it's not about like emptiness, like having nothing.
Right.
It's more about creating this mental space that's free from clutter.
Mental space?
Think about it. Your to-do list is a mile long, your inbox is overflowing, your thoughts are just racing a mile a minute.
Oh, stop. You're stressing me out already.
I know, right? But vacancy, it's like hitting clear all on your mind.
Like a mental detox?
Yes, exactly. Creating space for peace and clarity to kind of bubble up.
I can get behind that. So
Yeah.
what about stillness? Is that just like sitting quietly, meditating?
It's more than just sitting still. It's about reaching a state of inner quiet.
Inner quiet.
Where you're not constantly reacting to every little thing that pops up,
Yeah.
It's about finding that calm center within yourself, even when everything around you feels chaotic.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But this line, it also mentions guarding that stillness with unwearying vigor, which honestly sounds a bit intense.
Right, like a constant battle.
Yeah.
It's not so much a battle as a gentle but persistent effort,
Okay.
Think of it like tending a garden. You wouldn't just plant the seeds and walk away.
No, of course not.
You've got to nurture them, weed out the distractions, create the right conditions for them to thrive.
So it's an ongoing process.
Exactly, cultivating that inner peace.
So stillness, it's not passive, it's active.
It is. It's an active state of being, very much so.
Interesting. And to really drive this point home, Laozi uses this powerful image in this chapter.
Oh, yes.
The image of plants returning to their roots.
Powerful imagery.
The text says, all things alike go through their processes of activity, and then we see them return to their original state. When things in the vegetable world have displayed their luxuriant growth, we see each of them return to its root. I mean, I know what a plant root is.
Sure.
But what's the deeper significance here?
Laozi is highlighting the cyclical nature of life.
Cycles, right.
Everything grows, flourishes, then naturally returns to its source.
Okay.
Just like a plant eventually withers and goes back to the earth, everything goes through these cycles: expansion and contraction, activity and rest.
And this returning to the root, that's where the stillness comes in, right?
Right, like a completion, a time to recharge before the next cycle begins.
Not an ending, but
A fulfillment.
I like that, a fulfillment. Laozi calls this returning to destiny.
Yes, recognizing that natural order to things, the ebb and flow.
Like the tides,
Exactly, or the changing seasons.
there's beauty in that constant change.
And accepting that change, understanding these constant cycles, that's what Laozi calls constancy, or Qing.
Okay, change.
He says, knowing constancy is called illumination.
Illumination, like enlightenment.
Exactly. This knowledge, this knowing the unchanging rule, the Tao, it brings clarity and understanding.
Like seeing the bigger picture.
Yes, you see the bigger picture, you act from a place of wisdom and peace. You're not just reacting to every little thing.
Makes sense. But what about the people who don't get it? The people who resist the natural flow?
Ah, good question.
Laozi mentions wild movements and evil issues,
It does sound a bit ominous.
doesn't it?
Well, imagine you're constantly trying to force things to go your way, resisting the natural ebb and flow of life.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. It's like swimming against the current.
And you'll never win.
You'll never win.
Wow.
And you'll just wear yourself out. When we don't understand the Tao, when we don't align with it, that's when we create unnecessary suffering for ourselves.
So knowing constancy, it's about learning to ride the waves, not fight against them.
Beautifully put. And this leads to the qualities of capacity and forbearance, which Laozi really emphasizes in this chapter.
Capacity and forbearance. Okay, break those down for me.
Well, capacity here, it's about having the mental and emotional space to hold different perspectives.
To be open.
Yes, open to what is. And forbearance, it's about having the patience and resilience to navigate those ups and downs, without getting thrown off balance.
So in a nutshell, it's about learning to chill out and go with the flow, but with a deeper understanding of what's really going on.
Yes, a cultivated chill, an informed peace, you could say.
This is fascinating stuff, but I've got to say, that was a lot to take in from just the first few lines.
It is dense.
I am really curious to hear what Dao Master Chu Mang Fu has to say about all of this.
Oh, you're in for a treat. He has such a wonderful perspective, really makes these concepts relatable and applicable to our, modern lives.
Can't wait to hear it. Okay, so let's hear what this Dao Master has to say. Dao Master Chu Mang Fu, about chapter 16.
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the guy spent years studying and teaching these concepts, right?
He really has. And one of the things he emphasizes is that understanding the Tao, it's not about accumulating knowledge.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a certain way of seeing the world.
Like a shift in perspective.
Exactly. He uses this really cool analogy of the sky to explain it.
The sky?
Yeah, think about it. The sky itself, it doesn't change.
I mean, unless it's cloudy or...
Right, but the weather patterns, the clouds, the colors, those are all constantly in flux.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
The Tao, it's like the sky, unchanging, eternal.
And everything we experience in life, that's like the weather.
Yeah. Always changing, but always playing out against that backdrop of constancy.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And just like observing the weather can help you understand the patterns of nature.
Right.
Observing life cycles can help you understand the Tao.
Exactly.
He also talks about this idea of recurrence, right?
Yes. He's big on that.
Like seeing how patterns repeat themselves.
It's all about patterns. He explains how everything, even human behavior, it follows certain patterns.
Interesting.
And once you start to see those patterns, you can begin to understand the underlying principles at work.
So it's about taking a step back, observing, instead of getting swept up in the moment.
Exactly. And that brings a sense of calm.
Because you're not just reacting to every little change.
You're seeing it as part of a larger process, like realizing that traffic jams, delays, they're just going to happen.
It's not personal, it's just life.
It's just part of the flow of life, and that can be really freeing.
I love that. It's not about ignoring things, but about understanding their place in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
Don't sweat the small stuff,
Yeah.
but on a cosmic level.
Exactly. And Tao Master Chu Mang Fu, he's very clear that this understanding, it requires effort.
Makes sense. Nothing worth having comes easy.
It's about cultivating stillness and observation.
Like anything, it takes practice, dedication.
He emphasizes that it's not about achieving some kind of perfect, static state.
Yeah, I could see how that would be, impossible.
It's a journey, a continuous unfolding. You deepen your understanding through practice and reflection.
This is all resonating with me, but okay, how do I actually apply this ancient wisdom to my, crazy modern life?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
I mean, I can't exactly go live in a cave and meditate for the next 10
You
years.
don't need a cave.
Phew, good to know.
Dao Master Chu Mang Fu, he offers some very practical suggestions.
Okay, like what?
He talks about the importance of finding those moments of stillness throughout your day, even just a few conscious breaths before a big meeting,
That I can do.
or going for a walk in nature to clear your head.
Little things that make a big difference.
Exactly. And remember those cycles we talked about?
Yeah.
They're not just in nature, they're in our own lives too.
Okay, so, my career has its ups and downs. Relationships ebb and flow.
Exactly.
Even my energy levels, some days I'm on fire, other days I can barely function.
Recognizing those cycles, it allows you to ride them with more grace and ease rather than resisting them.
Instead of fighting against the current.
Exactly. If you're feeling drained, it's okay to rest and recharge. You don't have to push yourself constantly.
This is starting to make so much sense, this ancient wisdom. It's so relevant to our lives today.
It really is. But I think we're ready to dive into some even more concrete examples.
Yeah, let's get practical. Okay, so we've spent some time with chapter 16, got some great insights from Dao Master Chu Mang Fu. Now, I'm curious, how do these Daoist ideas, these Eastern concepts, connect with our own philosophical traditions here in the West?
Oh, it's fascinating. There are some really intriguing parallels and some interesting contrasts, too.
Okay, let's start with the concept of emptiness, stillness. What do we see in Western thought?
Well, we can find similar ideas in Stoicism with philosophers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius.
Oh yeah, the Stoics.
They were all about inner peace, controlling your reactions to the outside world. Very much in line with that Daoist focus on stillness.
So even though they come from such different cultures, different time periods, there's this common thread.
This shared idea that true peace, it comes from within, not from external things.
It makes you think. And this idea of stepping back from your preconceived notions, kind of clearing out the mental clutter, that reminds me of phenomenology, right?
Yes. Specifically, Husserl's idea of epiche, which is basically suspending judgment. Seeing things with fresh eyes without the baggage of your past experiences.
Right, like the vacancy we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. But, and this is where the contrast comes in, Taoism, it goes beyond just the intellect.
Okay.
It's not just about thinking your way to stillness, it's about cultivating a deeper harmony with the Tao, almost an intuitive understanding of the natural flow of things.
So it's more than just having like a stoic mindset. It's about being in tune with the rhythm of the universe.
That's a great way to put it.
What about Laozi's idea of returning to the root? Are there any Western parallels there?
Well, Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, you can't step into the same river twice.
He talked about this concept of flux. Everything is constantly changing.
Okay.
That resonates with Laozi's view of cycles. But Laozi, he focuses more on the return. The idea that even amidst all this change, there's this underlying principle that everything comes back to.
It's not just change for change's sake. It's part of a larger pattern, a return to something essential.
Exactly. And this idea of returning to one's origin, it also connects to Heidegger's being towards death.
Okay, that's a bit heavy.
It is, but the idea is that facing our mortality, well, it can give us a clearer sense of what truly matters.
Yeah.
But again, Laozi's focus is less on the individual and more on the universal process of returning to the Tao.
It's not about fearing death, but understanding it as part of this larger cosmic dance.
Beautifully said. And lastly, we have the concept of constancy.
Right.
It resembles Plato's forms, those eternal, unchanging ideas. But for Laozi, the Tao, it's not something you just grasp intellectually. You experience it by being in harmony with it. It's like the difference between reading about a beautiful sunset and actually witnessing it yourself.
Perfect analogy. You can't just think your way to the Tao, you have to live it.
So how do we actually do that in our modern lives? We keep coming back to this question.
And it's an important one. We don't need to go live in a cave, though.
Good, because I'm not really the cave-dwelling type.
There are practical ways to bring these principles into everyday life.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Remember vacancy.
Bringing it to the utmost degree, yeah.
Well, in today's world, practices like meditation, mindfulness, even just taking a few minutes to unplug, to disconnect from technology, those can help you cultivate that inner stillness.
So even just taking a 5-minute breathing break during a crazy day can make a difference.
It can make a world of difference. And what about those cycles?
Oh, right, the cycles.
They're not just in nature, they're everywhere. Think about investing, for example. Yeah, look at Warren Buffett. He's known for his long-term strategy. Doesn't panic with every little market fluctuation. He sees the ups and downs as part of a larger cycle.
So it's about playing the long game, not getting caught up in short-term trends.
Exactly. And that's valuable not just for investing, but for life in general.
What about this idea of returning to one's root? How do we apply that in a practical way?
Well, we see this reflected in the slow living movement, the emphasis on reconnecting with nature, simplifying your life, aligning your work with your values.
It's about finding that sense of grounding, purpose, being true to yourself.
Exactly. And finally, remember how knowing constancy leads to illumination.
Right, that aha moment.
Developing a consistent practice, whether it's journaling, meditation, creative pursuits, anything that helps you connect with that deeper wisdom, that can be really powerful.
It's about finding those anchors, those routines that keep you grounded when everything else feels chaotic.
Absolutely. But what happens when we don't know constancy?
Good question.
Think about the dot-com bubble, or the tendency to overcommit, chase fleeting trends. We lose touch with that sense of balance, that understanding of the natural cycles.
So it's not about rejecting everything modern, but about finding that middle path.
Yes, that balance between action and stillness, embracing change while staying true to your core values.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. from ancient Chinese text to modern-day applications. It's amazing how this wisdom of the Dao De Jing is still so relevant.
It speaks to something universal, I think, this longing for peace, meaning connection with something bigger than ourselves.
Well said. So to our listeners, as you go about your day, your week, your life, think about where you see these cycles playing out. Where could you benefit from a bit more stillness, observation, maybe even a little bit of that vacancy Laozi talks about? How can you align your actions with the knowledge of constancy, with that understanding of the Tao's rhythm?
The answers, they lie within. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, may you find peace in the stillness and wisdom in the cycles.